And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very mad world. Mad world.
I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is
Sundown Week.
Sundown Week.
Yes.
This is Spineshank-Self-Destructive Pattern.
Oh my gosh, I read it as Spine Shark.
What?
I never read these titles right.
Spine Shark?
That's what I saw in my head, Spine Shark.
Okay.
I know.
Spine
Sometimes
Shark.
when I'm giving the kids spelling tests, they're like, they correct me. I'm like, oh no.
This is the band Spine Shark.
I give them to them all at the same time. There's 4 of them, so I've got all these tests lined up. I'm like, okay, I need to slow down.
Spineshank.
Destructive pattern.
Destructive. Good Lord.
Yep, self-destructive pattern.
Very
Okay.
uplifting week for you wonderful people.
Yes, I am on maternity leave. That's why you're seeing these videos. Shout out to the big. Are we?
Yeah, shout out to the big homie Steve, who's brought us all this
Yep.
wonderful uplifting week.
Yes, bright,
And-
sunshiny.
Yeah, let's do it.
Here we go.
Feel the tension of rejection. Bleach it out with a therapy. The confusion and seclusion turns it into my deformity. Never trusted, maladjusted. I become my own instead of me. Animation, organization. Things that I've been trying to set at me. Singing off the lunatic, it's all around me. This attention is killing me. The isolation just around me. Different vision, but it's killing me. It's what I can't control. What I can't control. What I can't control. Born again, I feel so hollow. Torn again, my senses fade. Born again without the sorrow. Born again without the blame. What's an illusion? It's all inside me. This condition is killing me. The evolution is divided. Different vision, but it's killing me. It's what I can't control. What I can't control. What I can't control. Born again, I feel so hollow. Torn again, my senses fade. Born again without the sorrow. Born again without the blame. I can increase the treatment. It won't suppress the feelings or stop the way I'm getting used to the pain. I can increase the treatment. It won't suppress the feelings or stop the way I'm getting used to the pain. Breaking down, self-destructive pattern. Breaking down, self-destructive pattern.
Yeah, you like new metal.
Yes.
You like those cheap riffs that
I do.
Yeah.
It's not just that. It's the heaviness of the vocals, and when everything gets all crazy, but then he comes in with that clean vocals. That there's a certain type of vocal style that I really like.
That is the template of new metal.
Yes,
That's
I really like it.
Yeah.
I'm a new metal fan, apparently.
Yeah, that's why it exploded, and then that's why it died, because every band was doing that. You know what I'm saying? You had like 50 bands. You had 50 bands doing the same thing.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
That's why
if everybody
Korn,
puts it out, then yeah.
Korn's like the last man standing, out of that whole era. You had Linkin Park, but rest in peace, the big homie. And then you had Slipknot, but Slipknot they moved away from the new metal sound after like the second or third album, so they kind of just hard rock at that point. But okay, so the name of this song is Self-Destructive Pattern.
Yep. Yikes.
Which, that's a big thing. When you go to I had a psychotherapist and all that back in the day, and a lot of the stuff that you do that's not healthy is pattern behavior. And a lot of it, like a lot of what they were doing with me, like trying to work me through it, is like helping me to see it. And then you kind of reverse engineer and look backwards and go, okay, where was the origin for you? And then it really gets deep, because then you look at like this is a generational thing in your family, and a lot of families, like if you have like a context where that's not being addressed like directly, you can just end up walking through those patterns over and over again and not really understand what's happening. You just know, oh, it's the 15th time this has happened to me.
Oh my gosh.
Like there's this person that I follow on Facebook, and there's two of them, and it's like, on the one hand it is kind of sad, but on the other hand, like it's clockwork, and she's been like that for years. Like, she'll find a guy, oh, I like this guy, blah, 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 maybe this time, and then the next thing, I was so stupid, blah, 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 I hate men, and then
there's always the F word in there.
15 posts about how she hated him, and then it back, like, it's the same thing over and over again. It's like, holy moly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's very interesting, because when you're an outside observer, you can see there's an obvious pattern.
It's easy to see it, but when you're in the middle of it...
Right. When you're in the center of it, it's extremely difficult
I think, too, that sometimes people just kind of keep making the same choices. It's just like a different face, but the same type of person that they keep hooking themselves up with. And so in cases like that, it's like, it's gonna...
Yeah, that specific person, sure. But, there's a trade-off to everything. So, like, if you've done the same thing, or if you've had the same pattern for 20 years, and you've been doing it over and over again, it seems like a big effort to break that pattern.
Well, yeah.
Because it's like, this is the same thing I've been doing for 20 years. But the thing that I said to myself at the time, I was 18, 19 at the time, was, look, if I don't break this pattern, I'm going to have to expend a bunch of emotional energy anyway. So I would rather spend, 50 units of emotional energy now to break this specific, mental pattern than spend 1,000 units of emotional energy by dragging it out over 5 or 6 years. You want to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's very, very difficult to, like, if you don't have that conversation with yourself and you're not convinced that trade-off is worth it, then you're never gonna, but. It's one of those things where you almost have to talk yourself into health a little bit, because it's, and once I learned that lesson, it ended up working for me. And then, like, you start helping people out, it's the same thing. It's like, you identify the problem and you go, look, it's going to take you a hell of a lot of emotional energy to get over this thing and go in a different route. But you're going to spend that energy regardless. Right. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's this rent costs $1,000. It's like, I don't want to pay $1,000, and then it's like, okay, well, hold on to it for a couple of months. You'll be at $3,000. What's the difference? You might as well take care of it now than take care of it later. But so, like, that stuff with mental health is really, really difficult, because most of us did not choose the patterns that were, placed on
gifted to us by our parents.
Well, yeah, we didn't choose that. So, it's a hard thing to, but what happens is you didn't choose it, but you're choosing to live in it. And that degree of accountability is extremely difficult to take onto yourself, because we always want somebody else to blame. And quite frankly, a lot of our parents, a lot of times, give us, give us ample reason to blame. I remember, like, I was sitting in this was like a massive moment for me in my life. Like, I'll never forget it. I was just sitting in this, it wasn't DBT, it was something else, some group thing at the hospital, and everybody was talking about their life or whatever, and then they were talking about me, and they were talking about how great I was because I never did this and that, and I had this horrible upbringing, and I'm in the hospital at this point. These are the psychiatrists and the counselors and the whatever, and it was this group session, and it was just like, oh yeah, and your parents and blah blah blah, and I had a colorful childhood, just say it that way, and it was just clear as day. Like, somebody sitting next to me God was like, don't listen to them. You have your issues, your parents have their issues. How about you just deal with you? Don't worry about your parents. And it was just clear. It was like somebody sitting next to me was like, and like no disrespect to them, because they were doing their best to help me, but that was really a big turning point for me. It's where I was like, you know what? My parents, I can moan about my parents all I want. Like, it's my life now. I'm 18 years old. I got to make decisions for myself. So that kind of started the ball rolling, and it got me to a place where I was able to kind of look at those patterns and go, oh, okay. But then that revealed a whole bunch of new patterns, and then you got to try to figure out, okay, like, what's the biggest rock that we can get rid of before we, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Feel the tension of rejection, purge it out with therapy. The confusion and seclusion turned into my deformity. Never trusted, maladjusted, I become my worst enemy. I mean, what are you thinking when you saw some of these lyrics?
I mean, I feel like lots of people have these feelings, like, feel the tension of rejection, like the way that rejection feels. And sometimes rejection is like literally you're being rejected, and some of it is perceived. You perceive that somebody is rejecting you, or people are rejecting you. And sometimes, we talk about self-fulfilling prophecies. You're like, oh, they're going to reject me. And so you automatically go in with like, there are winning personalities, and there are types of personalities that people want to not be around.
Right.
And so if you go in with just like a mopey, like you have nothing to offer the group, and it's just about, you know what I mean? Then yeah, people are going to kind of like, So I think that, when I read that, feel the tension of rejection, purge it out with therapy, like I was just thinking everybody deals with that to varying degrees, and I think some people probably don't deal with it really that much, but you have this problem, and you're going to purge it out with therapy. Then the confusion and seclusion turned it into deformity. It just seems to me like just the issues and the cycles that people go through, and then the feelings that you feel when you're in the middle of all of that, and never trusted, maladjusted, I've become my own worst enemy, because if you don't trust people, then you can't have really any depth in relationships because you don't trust them. And so when they say something, you're always wondering if they mean something else by what they're saying, or and maladjusted, you're never adjusted properly in any given situation. But that makes it so you become your own worst enemy, because you could have significant relationships, or you could have you could be better adjusted in certain circumstances, but because of how you are, and because you have all of these issues, you become your own worst enemy.
Yeah, the trust thing is a really interesting issue, because being a person that, for whatever reason, gets a bunch of human beings around them, be it popular, charisma, whatever people want to say, it's, you attract, I attract groups of people, and how to, that was one of the things where it was like, coming from New York City, it's like things were a lot simpler, because you knew immediately who you could trust, because you're getting to get in conflict, and dudes are coming at you, people have weapons, blah blah blah. So the people that are there, the people that are like, oh, okay, word, let's go. Like those people, okay, you know that those are your folks, and then everybody else is like, you know, and it's so, and you know, at the time, you know, we were kids, so we were looking at it like, oh, this guy, he you know, we were attaching all this like moral, he's bad because he couldn't stand with us when the whole world blew up on us. You know, of course, now I'm looking back, it's like self-preservation is the most basic human instinct. Of course they're gonna run away. Like, which this is like, and so you know, so back then it was very simple. It was black and white. Like, is the guy ready to, you know, is he ready to go? If he's not, okay, he's not really your friend. And there were people that I like hung around with, I was cool with, but then they had problems. Like, I wasn't getting involved in that situation because I didn't like to do it like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, it was a both ways types of thing. You just knew who the real ones were, like who your real friends were, and who it wasn't, and then you just, you know. But when you get out of that type of environment, and then, you know, there are other environments and careers that I chose where that was also very obvious, but like in a regular environment, like here, and, you know, that was something it took me years and years and years to like do that arithmetic to, because in New York City, there's like thousands and thousands of people like all on top of each other.
Yeah.
So like you really don't know like who's popular. Like you really can't tell because everybody's on top of each other as far as like crowds of people or whatever. So I didn't really consider myself to be a charismatic, popular person. I came here and then like the way that people started relating to me, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd move in groups and everybody would be like,
Yeah.
So then I was like, it took me years to figure it out. You know, like somebody invited me to their little function and I didn't respond back to them, and I went over here and they're like, oh, you didn't come to my thing. And I'm like, so a lot of people didn't come to your thing. And they're like, that's because you went to the other thing and everybody went to that thing. And I was like, well, you know, how is that my fault? They're like, you're the you know.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh, okay. So, okay, I've got a charismatic personality. Okay. So, and then everybody wants to be your best friend because you've got this, you know, whatever. And I don't think that means that they're bad people. It was just I had to figure out like, yeah, but who are you know, because nobody's gonna come kill us, nobody's gonna try to do anything, like nobody's gonna look at us crazy, nobody's gonna, you know, like. So I was like, I couldn't figure out the arithmetic as to
that's interesting.
who are the people that I can, you know.
Yeah.
And now it's, you know, I don't know. And you know, maybe it's why, you know, I don't know. But so my strategy was, I was like, you know what, like I never really needed a bunch of people. You know, like even in New York, like we had people that were like that would stay after and be there. But I didn't like love those people. It was like 2 or 3 of those dudes that I loved them to death and I still talk to them to this day. But so, you know, it's one of those things. I don't trust a lot of people, but I don't distrust a lot of people either. You know, I like when I'm around people with the channel.
I know what that means. That just means you have certain expectations for people and you expect them to stay within those things. Like, you're not going to put too high of a.
Well, yeah, somebody, you know, like, you know, something happened, whatever, and then the guy goes and posts something, and it was like completely untrue, and it was one of those things where I was like, motherfucker, I have the text messages right now. Like, what the fuck are you doing? But then I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that shit. Like, I don't care what he's, you know. But at that point, I go, okay, that's one. That's one where I'm like, you know, we're cool or whatever. But like that guy is not. You know what I mean? But I don't think that means he's a bad person. It just means he got caught up in a moment of emotion. He's a very emotional dude. He went out and said a whole bunch of reckless shit. You know what I'm saying? Didn't really know what he was saying, or maybe he did. I don't know. But you know, I'm not gonna go out of my way to like disprove what he said. I mean, it was right there, and I could have made him look silly. But like, why? All it means is like, okay, that guy's over there, and that's, you know, just stay over there. You know, or like, you know, people like, yo. Because a lot of the stuff is digital, so like, oh, yo, so and so, look at this screenshot here and here and here. I'm like, oh, okay. But like, you can't be mad at people for that. Like, you're in a virtual relationship with hundreds of people. Like, you can't. That doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that they're not like in your inner circle, and not everybody's supposed to be in your inner circle. So that's where those are kind of things that I had to adjust. And again, it's the stuff you can't control. Like, you can't control people being like what you consider to be a stand-up person. Like, you can't control people. Like, that's how people are. So, I think a lot of relationships really go bad, or there's a lot of stress when people try to like make people to be a certain type of way. And to me, it's like everybody's on a journey. So if a person reveals to you, oh, this person's talking shit behind your back, blah, 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 blah. Like, you don't have to go into these crazy things where like, oh, I knew it. You were a horrible person with no redeeming quality. It's like, no, it just means that that's where they're at. That's how they are. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, but that's not where, I'm not going to make that. I can't control that. You can't control what other people do.
Well, I think that's
why when
he said it's what I can't control, what I can't control, what I can't control, then he says in me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because that's the real thing. Is like, ever since, a couple of years, like, I've been able to like look within myself and like work on myself and try to figure myself out. And so it's like, some of it is just like, I don't even have the energy really to like go after a person for betraying our online friendship, because I'm like looking at me and trying to figure out like, how did I get here and blah, blah, blah. So, it's not that I don't care. I do, but it's at the same time, it's like, that's a big thing for me, is what can I control? And the only thing you can really control is yourself and how you react to stuff. You cannot control other people.
True.
Because no matter how hard you try, like, they're going to find a way. Like, whether it's kids or whatever relationship you have, like, you cannot control people. So, and that's my philosophy anyway, but what were you saying?
No, I mean, I agree with that. I think that's accurate, but sometimes it's hard when you can't figure out where to put the control on yourself. So then you try to control other people or circumstances or whatever to kind of gain some control of the situation. So.
Yeah, I can increase the treatment. It won't suppress the feelings or stop the way I'm getting used to the pain. Yeah, that's at some point, hopefully by the time you guys see this, me and Matthew Winter will have already have done it, but the mental health aspect and treatments and medications and how that works with Christianity. I just saw some meme. I was like, very cringy meme was like, you don't need therapy, you don't need a psychiatrist, all you need is a Bible and a mature Christian and they can get you out of the situation, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so like there's like a lot of ways to swing on that. Like me personally, it's like, okay, we know scientifically that serotonin and all these other tonins and onins affect our mood and affect even our energy and affect our outlook on life.
Yeah.
And we know that. And we know that there's certain cocktails of chemicals that when you do that start to interact very well and relieve some of the issue.
Yeah.
But not everything is a chemical issue.
Right.
So some of it is environmental. Like for me, when I was in the hospital, and I was getting out, they hooked me up with a social worker who basically got me a free apartment for 6 months.
Yep.
Because they determined, okay, this guy's got major depression and major anxiety, and there was 3 or 4 other things going on. But at the same time, I was also in a environment that they deduced due to certain situations was not conducive to my mental health. Right? So they're like, okay, so on top of the medication, they're like, we got to get this kid out of this situation. So there are things that your psychiatrist and your counselor can help you with because there are chemical issues that are just there. But then there's other issues too where people swing both ways. So like the Christians, some Christians, not all Christians, like, you don't need that, you just need, it's only spiritual.
Yeah.
Well, even from a biblical perspective, you're still made up of a physical body. Like if you have a compound fracture, it's ridiculous to say, you don't need a splint, you don't need painkillers, you don't need to reset that wound, you just need the body. Like, no, that's a physical issue. So you're not going to get a spiritual solution for a physical issue. The guy needs to go to the doctor.
Yeah. But we always thought that if there was something that was going on mentally, that's because it was something spiritual.
Right.
So there was no...
Well, you didn't always think that, right? Like, in other words, like, for example, if somebody died in a car accident, you wouldn't say, oh, you're crying because you're in spiritual warfare. You would say,
No.
this person is sad because their dad just died in a car accident.
Yeah.
Right? So even from that perspective, there was a recognition that situational issues affect a person's emotions. It's not all spiritual. You see what I'm saying? Like, you guys wouldn't have said, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. Just pray about it. I mean, you would say, oh my God, you lost your father. That's horrible.
Yeah.
So that's a recognition.
Yeah.
That's a recognition that your sadness in that situation is not like some demon or something like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with that. It's just, if there would be like, that's an event. You know what I mean? Like, obviously that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I mean by
With somebody who's
situational.
chronically like that, then we would say, okay, that's a spiritual issue.
Right. And so that to me is an overcorrection. But the other side too is also an overcorrection, which is, oh, we figured out the serotonin thing and we'll get you an SSRI and boom, you'll be good in 4 months. Well, that doesn't work either because there are situational issues. There's environmental issues. Why are they like that? There's life pattern issues. Like, there's stuff that you need to change in your life. Like, so it's a balance of recognizing like how to harmonize all of these disciplines between all that. So, he says, I can increase the treatment, it won't suppress the feelings. And that's because, that guy's issues are not only, serotonin issues. There are other issues as to why he's in that situation. Mm-hmm. And if you don't get that right, then people go, oh, the meds don't work, so I'm going to get off the meds. Like, no, like, stay on your meds, please. Like, it's not that. It's, like, we're dealing with a situation with this person, and finally convinced them to go take some meds. And then she's like, I'm not feeling really good about this, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to take half. I'm like, do not remix it. Go with what your doctor is saying. Give yourself a shot. Mm-hmm. This person obviously has... Sometimes
it takes some time to kind of regulate it.
Well, it does.
For your body to...
Yeah, especially if it's an SSRI, for sure. Like, So, it's a really good song. It's a really deep song. There's a lot of stuff that they're saying here that's really...
When he said born again, I feel so hollow. Mm-hmm. What did he mean by born again?
Well, the only thing that I got out of that was there were a lot of people there when I was there that were like...
Here's your fresh start when you start.
Oh, I got a fresh start, I'm new, blah, blah, blah. And, they never really changed themselves, they changed the situation. Mm-hmm. So that's the situation again, where it's like, oh, you changed your environment, or you changed this, or what? Oh, so now you're a new person. And there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I'm saying? So...
Makes sense.
But it's a sad thing because you can see like people be all excited and stuff, and I never really got excited. Like, I never had like this giant like epiphany there where I was like, even like when I was alone with God in my apartment and things like that, and that's where my big turnaround came up. Like, there was no day where it was like, oh, it was like a gradual thing to where you look back after 6 months, you go, well, I'm a little bit different. I feel power. I feel like I can handle this in that situation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like. And I think that's where more authentic healing growth actually happens. It's the same thing with like a kid. Like, they start out like this little dot, and now he's this big thing, and then you've got Orion there, and he came out as just a blob. You're just sitting there doing nothing, and then after a while, before you know it, like, they don't just start walking. You know what I mean? Like, so, having realistic expectations in the whole mental health game is very important.
Yeah.
But when I always got nervous when I saw, even in the religious context too, like, I always get nervous when people have these giant epiphanies and they're, whatever. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or that it's going to end bad, because I've seen a couple.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a couple in a church context where somebody had this giant epiphany and they've never turned back. Like, they're, phew. Mm-hmm. And we still had to do a lot of work with her, but she's in pretty good shape right now. So, I mean, it can happen, but... most of the times it's gradual and unnoticeable, unrecognizable stuff. And I had a good shout out to Dr. Petzel, like, just like, do one thing today that would be different based on your condition. Mm-hmm. Just do one thing. And that made it like, okay, if I did that one thing, I had a green light to screw up on everything else. and it worked. So shout out to Petzel. This is a 9.2 for me.
It is a 9.8 for me.
Freaking good song. Good decision. There you go. Small steps.
Yep.
That's how you win the race. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.
treatment. It won't suppress the feelings or stop the way I'm getting used to the pain. I can't increase the treatment. It won't suppress the feelings or stop the way I'm getting used to the pain. Breaking down, self-destructive pattern. Breaking down, self-destructive pattern. It's what I can't control. What I can't control. What I can't control. Born again, I feel so hollow. Torn again, my senses fade. Born again without the sorrow. Born again without the pain. Feel the tension of rejection, bleach it out with a therapy. The confusion and seclusion turns it into my deformity. Never trusted, maladjusted, I become my own instead of me. Animation, organization, is another kind of side of me. Singing off the collapsing, it's all around me. This contention is killing me. The isolation, just around me. Different vision, but it's killing me. It's what I can't control. What I can't control. What I can't control. Born again, I feel so hollow. Torn again, my senses fade. Born again without the sorrow. Born again without the pain. What's an illusion? It's all inside me. This condition is killing me. The evolution is divided. Different vision, but it's killing me. It's what I can't control. What I can't control. What I can't control. Born again, I feel so hollow. Torn again, my senses fade. Born again without the sorrow. Born again without the pain. I can't increase the treatment. It won't suppress the feelings or stop the way I'm getting used to the pain.